We're welcome to the Northeast Texas Prairie Classroom. This is an outdoor classroom that teaches kids and adults about the tallgrass prairie, and we have a very special guest today. It's Dr. William Godwin. He helped discover this new species, and this is a really big deal. How often do we actually get to see a new species in this day and age? So Dr. Godwin is going to tell us all about it. So here you go.
Can you all hear me in the back if I talk like this?
Sound good.
Great. Do you remember Julius and Ethel Rosenberg?
Nope.
Yeah. What did they do?
No idea.
They stole, or sometimes now people think they didn't, they were accused of it falsely, but they were accused and executed for stealing the secrets to the atom bomb. By 1949, the Soviets had the bomb, and we were like, how did that happen? And Julius and Ethel Rosenberg got accused of that because that was top secret. This is more secret than that. I have sat with botanists at meetings. I sat with this one guy at a picnic table, and he was like this. He was just like, they stole my species. I went to these people and I said, I think this thing is a new species. And they said, no, it's just a minor variation. It's not. It's just slightly different. Oh, okay. Then he went back, and a few months later, a paper comes out, new species of such and such. And he would really have killed those people for stealing that. In fact, the scientists call this a species of eternity, because every species, name, genus, and species has an author. Like, what are you? You know, a lot of students here, so I'm going to back up quite a bit. You're Homo sapiens, right? What genus are you in? The genus Homo. How many other members of Homo are there? None. You're the only one. Who named Homo sapiens? The guy who invented the scientific naming system, Linnaeus. And he named it. So if you look it up, it says Homo sapiens Linnaeus, 1785. That's when he named it. Our host, Julie said, it's a wonderful thing, a rare thing to have a new species announced. Well, yeah, I want to tell you, this is the first talk we've given about it. The species name, how do they get named? Someone finds something and they think it's different because they know all the other ones. They're like, I know all 39 species of milkweeds around here in Texas, and this is not one of them. So they go through a long process, took about 2 years to write it up, to get the genetics done. Then it goes out for a review. You send it to a journal, and all the other scientists look at it and they say, no, go back and do this over again. Okay, go do that over again. It's a long, arduous process. So, it is a long process, but they're not rare. You're wrong. There are new species all over. It's just that people don't have the time to go and do all of this work. I probably have 10 or 15 new species of beetles that I need to be working on. But I'm at work all the time, taking care of other people's things. I keep thinking when I retire, I'll have time to do that. So, I'll try to go fast, but I know there are a lot of students here. What are milkweeds significant for? The monarch and several other insects. So, if we were describing a new species that's just something random, that has very little significance and doesn't affect other things, that would not be very newsworthy. We wouldn't be, KLTV wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. it would be obscure, and about 5 people would care about it. This is different because it's a milkweed that the monarch butterfly and several other insects eat. I just got through telling that there's subsidy money. This is so important that the USDA has had subsidy that would pay you $11 an acre to manage your land for milkweeds. And then I'll get to the greater significance of this species. It's not just a new species and whoopee. No, it has biogeographic significance and it can tell us about where you live. How's this going to go? And there's a picture of it. It's just a green milkweed. You would have a hard time telling it from the other milkweeds. But you do need to know that the leaves have a little stem. That's important. The leaves are sort of round. And the stem is hairy. First time I worked with my colleagues on this, they said, "Is it hairy?" And I was like, "I can't tell." So we had to blow it up with the phone, and you see these fine little hairs. And they were so happy just dancing. They were like, "That's it, that's it." One of your Parks and Wildlife people, actually 2, Ben Hutchins and Jason Singhurst, wrote a very nice book several years ago called The Identification of Milkweeds in Texas. There's 37 kinds. Now there's 38. You can go look up this book online for free. Milkweeds of Texas. So we need to tell the story of how this was discovered. Let's see if I have a better picture here. This plant was described in like 1820 something. People where they were doing botany in South Carolina and North Carolina, they found this thing and they named it, this is Asclepias tomentosa. Tomentose means hairy. And for 150 years, everybody said Asclepias tomentosa is in Florida and North and South Carolina. And then they're like, we found some in Texas. These botanists are obsessed. Think of the most obsessive, compulsive person you could think of. And these people beat them. They have scoured the countryside. People say, it probably occurs in between there, just nobody ever found it. No. It has been exhaustively searched. And it does not occur anywhere. There's a few records that nobody can find anymore in Georgia, but there's none in Mississippi or Alabama or Louisiana or Arkansas, and it just shows up in Texas. So for years, people were like, that's weird. Maybe it's called disjunct. Maybe they're different. I don't know. Nobody would pull the trigger on it. One of these obsessive botanists, Jason Sepka, he's a nurse, but he's obsessed with milkweeds. He's writing The Milkweeds of Eastern North America. And he would take time off from his nursing job and drive to Kansas to look at some rare milkweed and take pictures of it. It has to be the perfect picture. He came to Texas and he took pictures of this thing that was called tomentosa, and he said to himself, I've looked at these plants in Florida. He has looked at all of them, and he said, these look different. Why? There has to be a character why it's different. And he said, these petals at the bottom are, in most of the plants, they stick out like that, like a little skirt. But in this one, they're held close to the stem. And he said, that's different. So he went to a guy named Dan Duran, who is famous for extracting what we call cryptic species. species that look exactly the same, but the genetics is different. Almost as if one of you, we were like, you're all Homo sapiens except you. You're an alien. You'd be like, how did you tell? Because, well, you have two hearts, and your brain is not in your head, it's in your foot or something. And there are these characters that we never would have noticed. And we got to look more closely, and then we can tell that you're different. So for 150 years, people were like, oh, tomatosis in Florida and Texas. We were like, no, this guy saw the petals are slightly different. We need to look into that. So they contacted me, because I'm at the museum. I run the museum at Sam Houston State and in Huntsville. And they contacted me. They were like, we really need to explore the places where this thing is found. And you're in Texas. Will you help us? And I was like, sure. So I was on the team. The nurse. So that's a message for the students. These things aren't done anymore by one scientist who found it and studied it and named it, and they're very prestigious. No, this is done with genetics, geology, timing, morphology, and one person can't do all that anymore. So these papers, when these things are discovered, here's a screenshot of it by Duran, Sepka, Scott Davis, who's head of the Milkweed Organization, me, and a student at Rice who actually did the analysis. We have to form teams to do this now because it's so complicated. And the paper came out in August, so it's brand new. Phylogenomics reveals deep divergences and cryptic species within a rare sand-dwelling milkweed. It's cryptic, nobody noticed it. These guys came to me and they said, we need to do this project, but we don't have the funds for the genetics. And I talked to my director and I said, look, this is potentially a big deal. Our donors at the museum have donated and we've built up enough money. I say, we paid for their genetic analysis and, roll the dice and see what we get. Well, this analysis came back and it comes back with a phylogenetic tree, exactly the same as your family tree. There's like you and all your brothers and sisters, and there's your cousins, nested relationships. And it came back, and you can see these little petals. See, in the east, they stick out. And in Texas, they're close. Nobody ever noticed this before. You know why? Because nobody was a crazy nurse, Jason, who's like, every chance he gets, he drives around, and nobody's ever driven and just looked at all of them at once. So he did that so he could notice the differences. And it comes out with the Carolinas, Florida, and Texas came out. You got Anderson County all comes together, Van Zandt County, Wood County, Anderson County, San Augustine County, and Upshur County. When they all come out together, and these, what we call the genetic distance, it was incredibly different. They tell you, oh, well, you're like share this much DNA with a horse, and you're this much similar to a chimpanzee, like 98%. This was very different. So the plants looked very the same, but the genetics was just like, wow, they're super different. They've been apart for a long time with their genetics drifting apart. But their shape not changing, except very little. Does that make sense? So how do we proceed? We went and got herbarium records. We had plants in my collection from 1849 that were collected. So you can go to the plant collection in Fort Worth is the big one, or every university has a smaller one. Plants are pressed, identified, and put in the collection. It was very simple We're going to go to every collection we can find. We're going to ask them, do you have any Asclepias tomentosa? Oh, yes, we have 2 or 3. Oh, where are they from? Florida, 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 Texas. Oh, Texas, we want to see the Texas. So we gathered up all the Texas records, which sounds simple. I got them. This is extremely boring, but I'll read it to you. This is all the records in Texas. Franklin County on the south side of Farm to Road 900, 1.3 miles west of FM 115, 6.2 miles south of I-30 on the side of Mount Vernon, near Two Springs on the topo map, New Hope 7.5 quadrant, 33.0 quiz coordinates, August 1998, Steve Orzel and Bridges. They put this obsessive data down. And some of these are like Franklin County between 2 no trespassing signs. 2013, 1963, 1924, 1920, 1920. Here's Reverchon, Smith County, Lindale, 1902. Are any of you from Dallas? Have you been to La Reunion? What is that? Reunion Square? You know that's named because a bunch of French people were like, we got to get out of here. We're going to Texas, right? And they all moved to Texas. Remember this story? And there was this little town called Dallas, and they moved out there, and they started their little French settlement. He was one of them, and he was a botanist. So I want to stress to you that this looks boring, but it's so dense in cool information and famous people. Just super famous people. And amazing, every one of those little records in it, an amazing story of somebody driving around Texas in a Model T or with a mule, and collecting plants and taking it back to a museum and pressing it. So we got all these records together. And what we figured out, they're not there anymore. They're not there anymore. Let's go to this spot. Not there anymore. Oh, look, they're still here. They're not there anymore. So, of all these places where it was found, many are gone. Your place probably had rare things, but then it was a dairy farm for 50, 60 years, yeah? Stuff was like eradicated. If you work hard, you could go around Yandis and you could find some little hay meadows or scraps that were left. There'll be something really rare that just barely survived, a few of them, and get seeds and bring them back. I'm sure this is your plan, right? To add things that are unusual. We started looking at the geology of the thing. There's a thing called Pocket Geology of Texas. You get on your phone, go Pocket Geology of Texas. It'll tell you, do you want to see where you are? Sure. Got it. So here in Yandis, there's like Lake Fork, there's Yandis. And we're on the Wilcox group, Undivided. Many of you have heard of the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, right? And it's kind of dark in here, but you can look and see what geology you're on. That little star is Yandis. And it turns out this species that we thought was new, and we got the genetics back, where does it grow? Holy cow, it only grows in the deep, deep sand. How many of you are like at Athens or over between here and Quitman? In fact, there's a story, there's a diary of a man named Newsom who came to Texas just before the Civil War. Have y'all seen that diary? And they published it and they called it This Everlasting Bed of Sand. Because that man's diary says we got our oxen and we got all of our equipment and 10 wagons and we crossed the river, we crossed into Texas, we traveled here, we stayed there for a week, we camped out on our way to Wood County. And when he gets about to Gilmer, he starts writing, oh my God, I am so frightened. This everlasting bed of sand, our wagons are sinking in it. We'll never be able to grow anything. It's just like pure white sand. I'm so scared. I think we have made a big mistake moving to Texas. They went on for days through this sand. He called it this everlasting bed of sand. And then he gets to Quitman, and he's like, thanks to Providence that we got to Quitman, and the soil is good. We got out of the sand. What is that sand? That sand is a beach. That sand is a beach that runs from San Antonio and Laredo and Carrizo Springs, south of San Antonio, up through Hearn, Palestine, Athens, just a few miles from here, through Quitman, Mount Vernon, and on up into Arkansas. It's called the Carrizo Sand, and you can see it, this sort of brown thing. It is a beach of pure white sand. Many of you drink out of it every day. You have a well that goes into the Carrizo Sand. You drill a well 300 or 400 feet deep. How many of you have a well in the Carrizo Wilcox Aquifer? And what do you do to it before you drink it? Nothing. You just pump it out and drink it, don't you? Because it's pure. It's an amazing new resource for Texas, in fact. Kyle Bass is coming here. Are many of you worried about that? Kyle Bass wants to come and buy water rights in this and suck all your wells dry and sell it. So it all fits together. It's a giant beach, 800 feet thick of sand. It outcrops all the way across Texas. And this new species only grows on it. Or if you associate, there's the Carrizo and there's the one called the Sparta, which is in Tyler. Have you seen the deep sand in Tyler? So those are three beaches where the ocean came in and out. It kind of went in and out. And then it came in, not quite as far, and out. And then it did it again. At the same time that the Rocky Mountains were getting pushed up. So there were lots of sediment running down to the coast. Have you ever been to Padre Island or Galveston? That is a little tiny barrier island. Only 3 to 5 to 7 miles wide. At this time, it was gigantic. And it's still there. In fact, here's Yadis, and here's the Carrizo Sand in blue, and the Queen City Sand, and the Sparta in orange. And here's the record from those old records. Here's the one in Wood County, 1902, from Mr. Revershawn. That's still growing there, fortunately. So you understand that this is a detective story? You want to do CSI? This is harder than that. And there are those beaches stretching across Texas. From Carrizo Springs on the Rio Grande, that's San Antonio, you can see it. There's Dallas, there's Houston, that's probably, I don't know what that is, Texarkana. You can see the Red River, and you can see these old beaches stretching across. And that's really amazing that you can go and find species that are living on this island. It's like, it's not an island anymore. It's not a beach anymore. They just don't know it yet. At this point, you should be thinking, the milkweed makes seeds, they blow around in the air. You're crazy, Godwin. That's not just on there. What we can tell is, in Florida, where this lives, Florida is very sandy. And there are little islands along the coast. A lot like little Galvestons and Bolivars. And they found that the sister species over there in Florida, which is still called tomentosa, and we've named ours Tonkaway, over there, they had a mystery. They were like, this thing grows on some of these islands, but not the other ones. How does it get to some islands and not other ones. They figured out that it grows in the sand dunes. Think about it. If you're in a sand dune and the back of you is a lagoon and out to the front of you is the ocean, and you make seeds and you let them go, which way are they going to go? How often does the wind blow down the beach? Never. It's either blowing out to sea or in. So these species that get on islands, they get adapted to stay on the island. If your seed blows out in the ocean, it's dead. So these plants grow by root cones. And they figured out by looking at aerial photographs from the past that the islands that have the plant were once connected. As the islands move around and the plants moved on there. And the islands that were never connected, the plant can't swim, basically. It has to go through the sand very slowly. Because as the sand dune slumps over, it breaks the roots. And the plant, some little roots get moved over, and it grows 12, 15, 20 feet away. And then maybe 10 years later, it moves a little bit more. And it moves along the sand that way. That's why the genetics is so different, because they've been moving like that, not with seeds, see? If we look at you, you're an amazingly diverse group of people, because you're all reproducing sexually with a mother and a father. You're not reproducing asexually through root clones. We don't cut your foot off and then grow another person. And you traveled the world. There are people here from all over the world. You've got genes in here from Polynesia and Russia and Africa and everywhere. We are all mixed up and vibrant. These things are adapted to live on an island. So then we get into the problem. Why is this thing in Texas backed out? And in Florida? Well, if you know anything about geology, you know that Appalachian Mountains are here. And if over there they call it the fall line. All along the base of the Appalachians, these beaches occur too. So what we figured out is our beaches go up to Franklin County, across into Arkansas. The Carrizo-Wilcox goes all the way up here. The Mississippi River has just obliterated it. But if you could, it runs under there. It's covered up with mud, Mississippi mud. But if you go under, you're connected into other sands. You call it the Carrizo sand in Texas. If you go to Mississippi, they'll be like, what are you talking about? Carrizo? Well, this is the Meridian sand. Don't you know anything? They call it the Meridian sand, and we call it the Carrizo. But it's the same layer. So we figure out, how in the world could this plant either get from here to Texas or from Texas to there? We're still working on that part. We can actually tell when we get some more analysis which way it went. I can tell you pine trees start here and they go to the east. Longleaf and loblolly start in Texas. And the genetics, of course, they do a lot of work on pine tree genetics because it's really important. And we can tell pine trees start in northern Mexico and they spread along here at the end of the ice ages. Amazing what we can tell now. And then when we get all this together and we're writing the paper, the question comes up, what are we going to name it? Guys, we sit around, and I got to make the winning suggestion. Is that some kind of alarm or something?
Yeah.
Green went off? Oh. Let me see. Oh. to tell you about the Tonkawa Indians. The Tonkawa were living in Texas, somewhere along the Brazos River. What is that? Monkeys? So, if you follow this Carrizo sand, you'll find that it's a sugary white sand. And sometimes there's rock layers on top of it. And they form little mesas and hills. And you can follow them all the way down to San Antonio. There's one of these mountains near Hearn, near College Station. And they've called it Sugarloaf Mountain ever since the wagon days. Because all the Virginians and the Tennessee people were like, that's Sugarloaf Mountain. What you don't know is, when Sam Houston was the president, he was a great friend of the Native Americans, and he promised them land. And those Tonkawas, they lived there, at the mouth of the Little River and the Brazos River. And then Mirabeau B. Lamar was elected president. And what was his policy on the Indians? Out. And he, very near here, he killed had war on Chief Bowles and the Cherokees and pushed them out. And those Tonkawas were pushed out too, to Oklahoma. For 140 years, they're out of Texas. This mountain, called Sugarloaf Mountain, they call it Red Mountain. And it is their place of origin. All their legends say this is, I don't even need that anymore. I can just tell them the end if it won't work. That's their place of origin. But they were pushed out, annihilated. However, they've got casinos now. They've saved their money. And the people who own that land, it went into the Resolution Trust Corporation because it was defaulted on. Tonkawas bought it. They're like, we'll just buy our own blankety blank mountain back. And in 2023, they just bought it. And they're working with conservation organizations, and that place is on the Carrizo sand. And also, any of you know our local archaeologist, Bob Skiles? Have you heard of him? Bob Skiles, like, Bob, what about naming this after the Tonkawas? He said, that would be a very good idea. Your plant is a plant of the edges. It only grows on the edges of the beaches, and it's sort of excluded from everywhere. And the Tonkawa, they were not like the Cherokee and the Comanche, who had a big range and a home. They also were a people of the edges. That would be very appropriate. So I was like, hey guys, let's name it Tonkaway. And everybody agreed. So there's Tomentosa in Florida and Tonkaway in Texas.
There it is.
Slow but sure, Doc.
Oh, that's it. That's Sugarloaf Mountain. They just bought that. It's an amazing place. And we do their botany. The sand habitat looks like this. This is in Wood County. There are places, if you know where to go, you can find this deep, sugary sand with an amazing diversity on it. It's greatly in danger right now. Here's a little mint called Rhododon ciliatus. It only grows in Texas and only on the Carrizo sand. This is a really beautiful native piece of it at Sugarloaf Mountain. I take people there to where it hasn't been messed up with a dairy or a cattle ranch. And a few little places have managed to escape. And that's part of my specialty, is traveling around the state like a madman with aerial photos and historical pictures and notes and finding these little scraps that got left. And when we do, all of these amazing endemic things are still growing there. But they're getting wiped out faster than you can imagine. Because everybody wants land. They all want to move out in the country. That sandy land is cheap. You can buy it, clear it. The USDA man will help you improve it with coastal Bermuda grass. And these habitats are disappearing like the horny toad. They're the Tonkawas announcing when they bought it. Tonkawa tribe reacquires Sugarloaf Mountain with intent to open to the public. That's an amazing story. Should bring tears to your eyes. I got to go to the powwow when they were doing their first dance there. I was invited. They were doing their first dance since they'd been around there before 1880. I'll finish up talking about this endemics, these rare things. You told me. It's very unusual to find a new species. No. This beetle, you would call a June bug, lives only in the sand, called hypothys. Probably, from here to San Antonio, there are probably 5 or 10 species. If we can just get the funding and the time to do their genetics, like we've done with this plant. Here's a little beetle, a scarab, there's one. See the dime? This 1992 dime? That's that scarab. It lives in the soil. It's blind and flightless, adapted to live on an island. It lives in Florida, in the sand dunes, and Texas. Have you heard that story before? Yeah.
You sure it's the same beetle?
Yeah, it's the same genus. And if somebody be like, here, I'll write you a check. Here's a check for $6,000. Go do the genetics. We'd be like, oh, we'll go down the sand and collect them all, get them in alcohol, send them off, get them sampled. Just would be like the same milkweed thing over again. This one, big, beautiful, shiny beetle, was named from Palestine about 10 years ago. They named it Cotalpa conclamara. What's a clamation or an exclamation or a clamorous? What if do your teachers ever say you're being clamorous or we're clamoring for some ice cream? What does that mean? It means we want ice cream. That's exclamation. Conclamera means exclaiming together. And I was there on the day when they were catching these beetles, a team of entomologists from A&M, and when they caught it, they were all running around screaming. Like crazy guys. They were like, this is it. Look, it's different. This is a big new scarab. Oh. And they named it conclamera. This is part of the beauty that I want to express to you, that these things that look boring, like boring scientific name, they all have this cool story behind them. A bunch of crazy guys from A&M, my bosses, and I was in school at A&M, and I was on this trip, and my bosses were just like, wow, we found this thing.
And what did you think of them?
I was right there with them. And some tiger beetles. We've just named 3 new tiger beetles in Texas in the last 2 years. Well, one of them was in Mexico.
Zoo taxa, where did it publish?
The latest one was in Science Reports. No, Nature. Nature Scientific Reports. They named it Houstoniana. You can just Google tiger beetle Houstoniana. That's a whole other talk about that, how that was discovered. It was in Texas Monthly. It was pretty cool. So what I want to encourage you all is, don't think everything has been done. Oh, this science has already done it, but there's nothing left to do. No, there's immense amounts to do. The DNA work for one of these projects is $6,000 to $10,000. But it's not getting like your DNA for your family thing. What's that? 23andMe or whatever? No, this is where we've progressed to the point we can do the whole genome rather cheaply, and we can pick and choose the genes that tell the story. It's been a whole class in biology when y'all get to college, but picking the right genes for the right story. Some that evolve rather slowly or maybe more quickly. And that kind of tells the story of this new species, which you can find near here. You can look up this paper, it's free. It's like open access, so you look up Asclepius Tonkaway, and you'll find the paper. And when we published, we put all the localities in there, unless they are, sometimes they're redacted. Sometimes they're if it's something very rare, that nefarious people would go and steal or collect, I can tell you there's only about 5 or 6 places where this thing grows now. And you'll probably be seeing it in the news in a year or two, that it's nominated as another endangered species in Texas. Do you have any questions?
I guess there's no hope of getting our own plants. We're not collecting seeds.